Hello and welcome to Ash and Des Remember. I'm Ash Price.
I'm Des O'Gorman.
And Des, do you remember what we talked about on the last episode?
We did, yeah, I do. I remember quite clearly, almost like we did it a while ago, that we spoke about classic Resident Evil, 90s Resident Evil, the creme de la creme of Resident Evil.
Yes.
Yeah.
Including Resident Evil Gun Survivor.
Oh, smeg, I forgot about that one. Damn it. All right, okay.
So today we're going to discuss a little bit. We're not going to come too far up to date because this is obviously a nostalgia podcast.
Yes.
But we do need to discuss what happened after the PlayStation and Dreamcast era of games and the change in direction, because a lot of people talk about when a new Resident Evil game comes out, they say, oh, it's not proper Resident Evil. And you kind of look back and realise that actually what's coming out now is proper Resident Evil because it is representative of Resident Evil for the past 20 years. The original era that we think about with the zombies and the tank controls and the fixed camera angles all happened within within about a 4-year period. And after that, it very much changed. The tank controls hung on for Resident Evil 4, but after that, they kind of went.
Yeah.
So...
Well, I think the main thing that came change is that obviously the makers of Resident Evil had had their fill of Raccoon City. So at the end of Resi 3, Raccoon City would bye-bye.
Yeah, although there was a lot over the past 20 years, a lot of games have come back, and you've got Operation Raccoon City and you've got Outbreak. And things like that.
We're gonna come back to Outbreak because I've got a little thing to talk about with Outbreak. But the main thing is that RE3 was done, Code Veronica was done, and then it led in to Resident Evil 4. And to say that it went in a tonal shift is an understatement.
Resident Evil 4 is an absolutely amazing game.
It is a phenomenal game.
But at the time, and I don't think it's true anymore, but at the time, it wasn't really a Resident Evil game.
There is mention of Umbrella in this game
briefly
3 times. It's mentioned only 3 times. It's mentioned in the beginning, and it's mentioned by Leon and Ada once during your gameplay. And if you take that element out, it still works as a game.
There's you could make very minor changes to this game with character names and titles and all that. Yeah. And it makes very little actual difference to the game or the storyline or anything.
But does that ruin the gameplay?
No.
Absolutely not. This gameplay is tight.
It is.
The third person perspective is tight. Yeah. When you go into aiming mode, the laser reticle on every gun, it's beautiful. The inventory management with the suitcases,
which came back for Resident Evil 8.
Oh, but that when that came out, it's still to this day kicks in my OCD. Because I've got to get my guns on one side, my ammo along the bottom, and my health healing items on. So it goes guns on the left, ammo on the bottom, healing on the right.
Yeah, so your herbs, your sprays, and your eggs.
And your eggs. Don't forget the eggs. Don't forget the eggs.
Good chucky egg.
You're so British.
But you couldn't use them as weapons, could you?
What, eggs?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could.
Could you?
Yes, you could throw an egg.
Could you?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, you could throw an egg at an enemy, and depending on what egg it is, be it a white egg, a brown egg, or a really rare gold egg, they will cause more damage. They could be sold for a really high cost with the merchant, and some of them are really good at health items. Because they take up 1 square of your inventory, but yet some of them will heal a posh a bit, heal the entire thing, or also give you a health boost to make your health bar rise a little bit more.
What was interesting about that was the yellow herb giving you the health boost, and it's like that was with it. You could, for the first time, I mean, early Resident Evil games, you could kind of upgrade your weapon a bit, like you get an extension for it. But RE4 gives you a lot of control over upgrading. It's got almost RPG elements in that way. Like you can upgrade your weapons, you can decide what part of your weapon's upgraded, whether it's the power, whether it's the capacity.
Which makes no sense on certain guns.
Yeah. And you could kind of upgrade them, and then you could sell them and get a better gun and tool that one up, and it encouraged you to be a bit more creative and to collect things, and it encouraged exploration.
Oh, the exploration is also brilliant. And I just want to give a wee shout out. There's a YouTube channel called Kendo's Gun Shop. which anybody who's interested in any of the weapons in the RE series, they do brilliant breakdowns of most of the weapons that is in RE4, weapons that were in the Trail Edition. They break down that. They also did a brilliant 2-part retrospective. Sorry, I'll forgive myself. It was a 3-part retrospective solely based on the Samurai Edge, the modified Beretta that the STARS officers used in the original Resident Evil.
A lot of fans are really obsessed with the weaponry in Resident Evil.
I wouldn't say I'm obsessed. I know,
but there are a lot of fans on it. I've always found it a little odd because for me it's just like, well, is this gun powerful, yes or no? Whereas I think a lot of fans are like, I like this gun because it looks a certain way and it has a connection to certain people. Yeah. Which for me, I just never really been interested.
That's okay. Yeah. But it's still good. If anybody wants to check it out, I just want to give a shout out because I've watched some of the things, and the way they present the channel is really, it's like they're presenting it as they were Joseph Kendo, Robert Kendo's brother, which I think is nice.
Resident Evil 4, it was a bigger game. It was huge. It's huge. No, I would say maybe too big.
Really?
Yeah, I think the problem is the last third of the game I don't think is particularly good. I don't kind of like the change to the degree that it was.
Okay, well, let me just quickly ask you this, right? Did you like the change from zombie to Los Plagas?
I actually don't remember.
What about now?
Now, I think because of how much things have changed within all the other Resident Evil games, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it does kind of make sense because if you speak to the right people and you read the right files, there's kind of an implication that it's grown in some way out of the Umbrella research.
Yeah.
There is kind of a connection there.
Yeah. There is like a little bit more connection when we get to RE8, but I think that's a big amount of retconning going on.
Yeah, I think there's an attempt with RE8 to try and squeeze canon into it.
Tie everything back together.
And I like Resident Evil 4. I think it's a great game.
It is.
And yeah, now in 2021, I would say it's a great Resident Evil game. Back in 2004 when it came out.
Tonally, I was all over the place.
Yeah, it was a terrible Resident Evil game, but a great game.
Yeah.
And I think now it is a great Resident Evil. Yeah. I will tell you what I don't like is they realized how big of a success Resident Evil 4 was and just carried on going down that direction and just making it more.
Yeah.
But in a way that took away from it. Because Resident Evil 5 builds on it to a large degree and a lot. And for me, I think Resident Evil 5 is my least favourite mainline entry.
Same here. But before we go on to RE5, can I just bring up a couple of things?
Yeah.
I'm sorry that we'll keep like flip-flopping about the place, but there's a couple of things that I really love about Resi 4. One of them is the merchant.
What are you buying?
What are you selling? It's that character that just randomly pops up here and there.
And then when you like sell him something really expensive, it's like, stranger.
Ooh, stranger. Now that's a weapon.
Yeah.
It's those type of things I really, really like. There was another thing that I really like the idea of Las Plagas, that these poor people are not in control of what they're doing. There's something really creepy about that. The regenerators.
Yeah.
Oh, and that weird breathing that they do.
Yeah, and kind of the shaking, the fidgeting. Yeah.
A lot of that just...
It's a great game. It is a great game.
But it's just, at the time, it was not an RE game. People have come around to it, saying that it is an RE game, and it is.
Because I think a lot of the changes that have happened over the past 20 years, it now is like, well, you know what? A Resident Evil game is any game that involves some sort of bioweapon. And that's literally the only requirement now for being a Resident Evil game.
As long as you reference Raccoon City in the RPD or STARS, then I think you're okay.
Yeah, bioweapon and some sort of mention.
Yeah.
like Resident Evil 8, Chris's involvement, it was kind of like nice to have the callback and all of that. It was nice having him looking like Chris again after the Edward Norton look-alike in Resident Evil 7. But it just kind of felt like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It felt like callback for the sake of callback. Although brilliant line comes from Heisenberg when you're fighting him as his mechanical form, and he just refers to Chris as that boulder punching bastard. Which brings us to nicely Resident Evil 5.
Resident Evil 5,
my least favourite mainline entry.
I went out and I specifically got a second-hand copy of the gold edition of Resident Evil 5. I think I got it for like £2 or £3 out of CEX. I went home, popped it into my PlayStation, I played 10 minutes, I took it out, and I haven't looked at it since. I cannot get used to the control scheme.
Yeah, I tried playing it recently because I got all of them on the Xbox.
It goes against everything you've learned in Resi's 1, 2, 3, Code Veronica, and 4. It doesn't feel right.
It doesn't. It's really badly controlled.
Yeah.
And even running around, it's like it's trying to make that jump from tank controls to a more 3D oriented control system. And it doesn't quite work.
No. Don't mean no likey.
I don't have a lot to say about 5 really.
Same here. You're in South Africa, is it?
It's an African country. It might be a fictional one.
Probably.
But it tries to wrap up all the storylines. It tries to wrap up the Wesker thing in really unsatisfying.
Yeah.
And it tries to wrap up everything that's gone before so it can kind of, I guess, make a clean break. And then I don't know, I mean, Resident Evil 5 is, I believe, the best-selling Resident Evil game.
I know.
And
that is crazy, that.
And it's just, it feels like after 4, each game becomes less like that traditional style of Resident Evil, which they don't kind of bring back until 7, which I think really captures the original feel.
Yeah.
But like 4, 5, and 6 are these weird little games that they're experimenting, and Capcom, fair play to them for experimenting, but I think for me, I think 6 is the better game.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of people hate it, 6 is bloated. 6 was a case of Capcom listened to all of the complaints, and then instead of making a game that addressed those complaints as a whole, they just went right, okay, well, this 2-hour section of the game is going to be for those who complained about this, and this section of the game is for those who complained about this. And it was really 3 different games that they tried to wrap into one.
But wasn't it that the one thing that they got rid of, I think they got rid of it in 5, that they had in 4, and still bloody annoys me to this day, QTE events.
Oh god, QTE, they are awful.
They are so bad.
The noughties era of gaming was just like obsessed with QTE events, and I think RE4 was the biggest offender.
Oh, they had them left, right, and centre. And it's bloody annoying. I think they brought them back a little bit in 6, didn't they? Like an action was coming and you either had to hit a button in time, or swivel an analog stick or something.
But it wasn't as offensive. And I'll tell you what, the worst bit of Resident Evil 4, and it's one of the things that's so bad.
Let me just.
It kind of puts me off wanting to replay it because of this little section.
Can I take a guess?
Yeah.
Is it the knife fight with Jack Krauser?
It is the knife fight with Krauser. Yeah, and it's just. And what's bad about it is you can't skip. Like, if you could skip just the QTE bits.
Yeah, and just watch that as like a cutscene.
Yeah, but you have to go all the way through that.
You could be almost done, miss one QTE, and then go back to the very beginning. Yeah.
And it is only a little minute section if you do it right the first time. And it's difficult to do right the first time.
Yeah, because you don't know what's coming.
Yeah, and it's just such a bad bit that legitimately it puts me off wanting to replay the game because I know I've got that bit coming.
Yeah.
And the QTE events were just weird, and it was experimental.
But they did bring him back in 5 because we now have that infamous punching the boulder. Because when you think of Resident Evil, you think survival horror.
Yeah.
You think being in a mansion or a city. And then you look at Resi 5, where the ending of it is a monstrous Wesker in a volcano while Chris is running around punching boulders to get by him.
I mean, mutated Wesker makes sense, but it just feels like the entire thing was a mess. And Resident Evil 6, they tried to course correct, but they did it in such a way that they made it worse. And the best bit of RE6 is Leon's bit, because you've got the zombies back and it feels more...
And you've got more fluid movement with Leon, because in number 4, Leon could shoot a Los Plagas victim in like the leg or the arm.
You couldn't shoot and walk, could you, in RE4?
No.
As soon as you aimed, you became stationary.
Yeah, which I still kind of like, because that means you plant your feet, you stand your ground.
Yeah.
But I like that you could shoot an enemy at a certain point and then you can run over and do a quick event where you kick or you slam or you do something like that. And they brought it back in number 5 where Chris is able to, I don't know, just show a muscle and everything in a 3-mile radius just fell down.
Yeah.
And
I like the fact that they kind of tied it into the mythology. It's just, it felt very much like the industry was changing and attitudes towards gaming was changing.
Yeah.
And Capcom didn't quite know what to do with Resident Evil.
Yeah,
so they tried throwing stuff at the wall, and a lot of it didn't stick.
It really didn't, because at this point you're 100% right. They didn't know what to do with Resident Evil, which is why you have the mainline series sticking with this third-person action shooter thing. And then you have little spin-offs like Outbreak, like we mentioned.
Yeah, I never played Outbreak, because I didn't have a PlayStation 2, and I think it was a PS2 exclusive.
Neither did I. Most of the things that I do with Resident Evil now is I will play some of the classic games for like a nostalgia fix, but I like to watch walkthroughs, because with Outbreak, I couldn't figure it out. And to be honest with you, I didn't want to figure it out, so I will watch a walkthrough of somebody that knows what they're doing, and they get like the best score and so on and so forth. I'm there for the story fix, because I love the idea of people trying to survive Raccoon City. I love things like that. But for anybody that hasn't played Outbreak, much like yourself, Ash, the opening cinematic is a retelling of William Birkin taking down Hunk and his team and the rats spreading the virus. It is by far one of my all-time favorite cutscenes, because of how it's shot, because of the music. Everything about it is just beautiful in a grotesque kind of way. And if you haven't seen it, or if anybody hasn't seen it, go and watch it. It's like 2 to 3 minutes long. Just go and watch it. If you're a Resi fan, you owe this to yourself just to watch it, because it is amazing. The game itself is meh, but that opening cinematic is so good. So amazing.
So around about that time, when you got Outbreak, there was an expansion into other types of consoles.
That's right,
handheld. They toyed with the idea of an Re1 Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advance.
Which there is like some footage of out there, some screenshots, and I saw what they were trying to do with it. I'm kind of glad they didn't go through with it.
We didn't really mention ports in the last episode.
No.
Like we didn't mention the Tiger.com port of Resident Evil 2.
You're going to bring up the Tiger
which is
port.
just awful.
Which we did like a retrospective for like one of the Edinburgh Horror Festivals.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that this existed until you showed it. And as soon as I saw it, I honestly thought it was a piss take.
No.
Until I found out that this thing is real. It's a real thing. And once again, anybody that hasn't seen it, go onto YouTube, was it Tiger Resident Evil 2?
Tiger.com. The device was called the Tiger.com. It wasn't a website. It was just literally just the Tiger.com.
And they have footage of
that.
And it's
bad.
So bad.
And so you probably, if you don't know, Tiger Electronics made those little handheld games.
Yeah.
And this was their attempt at a console.
Yeah.
But Resident Evil did get a proper handheld release in the form of Resident Evil Gaiden.
That's right, which now is non-canon. It's non-canon, but if I remember right, I just want to see if I get this right, you play as Barry Burton on a boat.
I think you also play as Leon.
You do play as Leon at some point, if I remember right. Or is it, I think it's Barry going to find
Leon.
It's something along those lines.
It's on a boat.
It's on a boat, and it is so weird.
It's kind of done from a sort of top-down motion, and when you get into combat, it's just basically it's a button press at the right point.
Yeah, it goes into first person.
Kind of like a rhythm game.
Yeah, it's a first person, and you have like a bar on the bottom and a little bar that goes back and forth, and you have to like kind of hit it at a certain point in order for you to attack whatever's attacking you. Yeah, and if it sounds weird, it is. It's incredibly weird. Yeah.
There are other games kind of around this era when we're getting into the 360 and consoles like that.
Yeah.
There's one game that gets a lot of criticism.
Oh.
I actually kind of like Operation Raccoon City. It's by no means a great game. But it's a fun game. I enjoyed it. It's like basically just a run and shoot.
Oh yeah,
it's just but it revisits elements from the previous games, and I kind of like that.
Yeah, because in certain elements, I think you start out by meeting Hunk in the underground area when he's going to confront William Birkin.
And it's non-canon because there's an option at the end to kill Leon.
Yeah, it's extremely non-canon, which, because, let's face it, the continuity for this franchise is
all over the place.
All over the place, and I kind of don't like that.
Yeah, especially because the mainline 7... And I would say 8 actually because 8 because there is 8. I would say 9 actually because of Code Veronica. I think is fairly in that. 10 because there's 0, so there's 10.
Yeah, there's 10 in the mainline series, and they do try and follow along the main continuity. There's one main continuity. There is
as bad as I think 5 and 6 especially, but as great as 4 is, but as bad as a Resident Evil game.
Yeah.
At the time, it does feel like there is a linear progression, and although the games get more and more
bombastic,
and bloated with like backstory and Umbrella is actually this ancient organization, and the 4 families is what it represents, and blah 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 blah. And it goes a bit too silly,
just a tad.
It does feel at least that the mainline 10 do exist within an increasingly crazy world, and they all do interconnect and link.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of offshoots that are also of varying degrees of quality. I think there was a period in time during like the 4, 5, and 6 era where there was a lot of criticism of the mainline games, but there were a couple of games on the side of that felt more like classic Resi, and they were the Revelation games. Revelations 1 and 2.
How the hell did I forget about RE Revelations? Yeah, they are really good games.
Revelations 1 and 2. 1 especially, there's just something really unsettling about being trapped on a boat.
Yeah.
In the same way as you were trapped within the Spencer Mansion. Like, there's the problem with some of the other Resident Evil games is they're just too big.
Yeah.
They don't have that claustrophobic nature, which is why 7 and, to a lesser degree, 8 were really good because they were in a much more enclosed area. But again, 8 is a bit more expanded.
Yeah.
But Revelations 1 especially, and 2, which is on the island, just feel much more claustrophobic. And in doing so, they feel more classic Resident Evil. They feel like this nice little merger of what it became with 4 and what it was in the 90s.
Because it started off as a handheld.
It did, yeah. Revelations was on the DS, I think.
Yeah.
Started as a DS game.
And if you can now get it on like a PS3 and a PS4 from the PlayStation Store.
And on the Xbox. I've got them on the Xbox.
There we go. And you really should... check these out.
I think I've got 2 on Steam as well, so you can get them on pretty much every console now.
So if you're wanting that fix of like survival horror from Resis 1 through 4, but with the gameplay elements of like
and the style,
style of 4 and 5.
The original. I think the style of the originals and the gameplay and attitudes of 4 onwards. It's a nice amalgamation. It's basically It takes everything that works from all of that first 6 games.
Yeah.
And distills them down into one adventure.
And
though I don't like the episodic nature, I've never been a fan of episodic games.
Yeah, I get you that. But to sell it some more, you do play as fan favourites. You get to play as Jill again.
And Chris for a bit. I've been
Chris for a little bit.
In fact, the first game, you get to play as quite a lot of characters. There's Chris, there's Jill, there's I've got a few new ones. There's a couple of side characters. You play as... Do you play as Rebecca?
I don't think you play...
Who is it you play as in the Terra Firma or Terra Grigia bit?
It's Jill's partner in it, isn't it?
There is one of the characters in the Terra Grigia bit is a classic era character.
Not Claire, is it? No, because Claire's in Revelation 2.
Yeah. Just kind of talk about Revelation games. I'm going to Google this.
I only recently discovered that through yourself. Again, we were doing like a retrospective, and you mentioned them. And I went and I checked them out, and they're really good games, really solid gameplay for something that was initially designed as a handheld. But they still hold up. They've got some really creepy elements in there. Some nice ideas with like the scanning of environments. It's things like that. I'm
trying to find out who you also play as, because Keith and Quint are the 2 other side characters you play as, who are kind of little... You don't get much with them. Yeah. And then you've got Jill and Chris. But there are 2 other characters that you play as. And I always thought one of them was... But it's not. It's someone called Jessica and Parker.
Yeah, Parker is Jill's partner.
I thought it was Rebecca. For some reason, I thought you could play as Rebecca in Revelations.
No, I don't think you can.
But then there's Revelations 2, which... feels even more like classic Resident Evil with the spin. And you play as Barry, and you play as Rebecca. Not Rebecca, sorry, Claire.
Claire.
Am I right in saying this is only the only other time you get to play as Claire in an RE game?
Well, you get to play as Claire, RE2, Code Veronica.
Of course, yes.
And this.
Yeah.
But this is the first time you get to play as Barry.
Yes.
Because I don't think you get to play as Barry in any other game.
Except for Gaiden.
Except for Game
Which we've established isn't canon.
It's not canon. They're canon, aren't they? Revelations.
Yes.
Yes.
Because Revelations 1 takes place to bridge between 4 and 5, and Revelations 2 to bridge between 5 and 6.
There we go. A lot of bridge work going on.
Yeah.
A lot of bridge work.
And Revelations 3, I assume, would bridge 6 and 7, or maybe not, because it's been quite a while now. But the Revelations game feel a lot more like classic Resident Evil.
They do.
And then, of course, we get into 7 and 8, which are much more recent and not really the topic for the nostalgia theme.
True, but we do... Well, more to the point, I feel I have to just get this out of my system, which is the remakes of 2 and 3. I want to touch briefly on them.
For me, this is going to sound criminal, but I think for me, the RE2 remake overtakes RE2 as my go-to experience of Resident Evil 2.
Okay, you're wrong.
I just think it captures everything so perfectly well. There are problems with it. The overlapping the way in which Scenario 2 is affected by Scenario 1 and the different storylines. It feels in the remake that actually you don't need Scenarios 2.
No,
they don't.
And that's the thing
You just replay what happened in Scenario 1.
Exactly.
Not from a different angle, not from a different position. It's just a different character.
Exactly. And I hate that. I hate that they change a lot of elements for the story. For the gameplay wise, it looks amazing. The RPD has never looked worse and better all at the same time. Some of the things with Leon and Claire, it's the story. It's the story that stuck with me when I played Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3. That stuck with me. And I don't like what they did with the story in RE2, and I really don't like what they did with the story in RE3.
No, I enjoy RE3 as a kind of classic-inspired Resident Evil game.
Yeah.
But I see RE3 more as kind of an Elseworlds version of the game.
It's the only way to look at it, but
it changes too much.
Yeah, I have a feeling that Capcom is going to use them as canon now from now on. Because we already had that thing on Netflix, Infinite Darkness, the CGI movie. They're already using the voice actors and the faces of Leon and Claire in that. And it's not really good.
RE3, I think, is a fun little game. You can complete it in under an hour.
Jesus.
Yeah, I think... I'm not sure what my record is. I think my record is about an hour, but I think the fastest speed run's like 25 minutes or something.
25 minutes?
Something like that. It's really, really short. You can complete it definitely in under an hour.
Jesus. For a AAA title?
Yeah, I mean, I get the feeling that it was probably intended as a pack-in for Resident Evil 2, is what I kind of feel.
Yeah, and then they released it with RE.
Oh god, those spin-offs.
Yeah,
I haven't even downloaded those. But yeah, I like them. I like RE3. It changes too much for me to feel like a proper remake of RE3.
Yeah.
Even more, it doesn't even feel like a reimagining. It's just basically taking some key concepts and making a brand new game out of them.
Yeah.
It's definitely, for me, I think it feels in the same category as Gaiden and as Gun Survivor, weird little spin-offs that exist in their own continuity that aren't part of the main. Yeah. It's a fun game. You get some good games, and it was great doing the challenges, and the replay of Resident Evil 3 is great. There's a lot of replay value in the RE3 remake.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, because I spent about a week just playing it constantly to get all of the extras.
Yeah.
It's a good game. It's not that, for me, that's not going to replace the original RE3.
Same here. But yet the RE2 remake replaces RE2?
I think it does, because it's they screwed up the overlapping bit. But yes. I think it generally sticks close enough to what happened in RE2 and expands upon it in such a way. And the gameplay is chef's kiss. Yeah, I think if you want the Resident Evil experience, I think you play RE1 remake from 2002, RE2 remake, and Code Veronica, and you get a really nice package out of those three games, I think.
Well, for me, it would be the RE1 remake, original RE2, original RE3, and then Code Veronica.
Fair.
But we're not going to. We're going to have to politely agree to disagree. On the remakes.
That's fine.
But we're not going to touch on 7 and 8 because they're a bit too recent.
Yeah, for our nostalgia.
For our nostalgia things. Maybe in like a later episode we can look at the CGI and live action Resident Evil movies.
Maybe we can. Yeah, I think because I remember I remember going to see RE1 at the cinema and quite enjoying it. That was, what, 99?
Mm-hmm.
That's like 22 years.
No, I don't think it was that early. I think it was like mid-2000s.
It wasn't that late.
No, I think bring it up.
We're going to check.
Well, let's see.
Let's see.
I think that it's like early 2000s.
I think maybe 2000.
They got through Resi's 1, 2, and 3.
You know what? It might be 2001.
Oh, now you're changing your story.
It wasn't. No, but it wasn't that late though.
You said 89.
Yeah, 99, 2001, 2000 isn't too late compared to 99.
Let's see. When did it come out?
2002.
Yeah, see, told you.
That's still 20 years.
I know.
Still 20 years.
I know.
I was still, we were still teenagers.
Oh, the good old days.
Like I think this came out when I was 18. So like
I think we need to address these, especially since they're doing
remaking,
relaunching the live action stuff for Netflix, and we're going to come across. We'll probably talk about them at some point. But we've brought up and discussed the weird years.
Yeah, the weird years.
The weird years. 7 and 8 are out there. Let's see where the franchise goes from there.
Yeah.
Is Ethan Winters gone? Is he going to come back? Should I give a spoiler alert? Possibly, but I didn't.
I mean, I think if you're listening to spoiler alert.
Yeah, if you're listening to this, it means that you're an RE fan.
Yeah, and you're probably aware of it.
Yeah, you're probably aware of all that type of stuff. But I think that more or less wraps it up.
Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah.
A little shorter than usual, but I think we've discussed what we need
to. I think, if anything else, this is going to be really, really bad, but it just goes to show how little we care for
the past 20 years.
Yeah, the 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
How little we care for them. Because we, at the time of this, we've done 32 minutes on 3 games, where we spoke about nearly an hour and a half on Resi's 1, 2, 3 Code for Erotica.
Yeah,
I think that
nothing
was
was pushing an hour for that.
But it just goes to show, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't think there's a great deal for us to talk about.
There's not because they're just they're
4 is a great game.
4 is a great game, but just take the Resi element out. You don't need it.
Yeah, it almost feels one of those things where you get a movie that's just made and people go, hey, let's slap on the name of an existing franchise and call it 2, like Troll 2 was just a movie they made, and then went, hey, let's call it Troll 2. Yeah. That's what Resident Evil 4 feels like.
Yeah,
it feels like they made a game and then went, let's just slap.
Yeah,
like some of the earlier build ideas for it, which we didn't discuss, like the Hooked Man,
were
even more of a departure, I think. So I think they
was like on an air blimp, and Leon was being chased by a ghost, and then at one point a doll gets possessed.
Like I think they reined it back in a little bit more,
just a tiny bit,
but still, I think. Oh, our producer's about to chip in.
Oh, the doll possession thing
came into it in 8, but I think again with where they got to with 8, I think the possessed doll works.
It's a weird franchise, and you know what? Even though we're not fans of 4, 5, 6
as Resident Evil games,
I still love this franchise.
Yeah,
there is something about the RPD and Stars and Raccoon City that still intrigues me.
Yeah,
and I love that we get games like the Outbreak and Operation Raccoon City that kind of tells little more stories about that weird little Midwestern city
so well
that keeps growing with every game that returns to it. It just started off as like a little place in the mountains, and then you look at the RE3 remake, it's a sprawling metropolis.
It is. And it fits with that version.
It does.
But what do you think? Post 4 Resident Evil or pre 4 Resident Evil, what do you like? What do you think? Leave a comment. Yeah, and
let us know what your thoughts are on 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah,
do you think that where Capcom took the franchise is a good thing? Do you wish that they would do more like the 2001 RE1 remake, where it's pre-rendered backdrops? Do you wish they would go in those things? Let us know. We want to know more from yourselves. We're going to be doing a few more podcasts about other horror
and stuff, because it's October, it's horror month, so we've got to do horror.
Halloween. I really wish I hadn't done that now. Halloween. But I think for now, I've been Des O'Gorman.
I've been Ash Price.
And remember, if you're heading outside, stock up on green herbs.
Keep it geeky.